Hello everybody and welcome to Random Automotive. Tyler here, and today I'm going to talk to you about getting a Jeep YJ or TJ when you're buying one used, what to look for. If you followed the videos on my channel for a little bit of time, you noticed that I had a YJ, a red one, before this one. Bought this TJ. I'm going to kind of show you the things that I looked for when I bought one. And this kind of goes for the Jeep market, but all vehicles kind of apply here too. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to kind of look at the paint condition of the vehicle. And just kind of take a close look, maybe in the sun, of the paint and see what we notice about it. You'll have to forgive the wind today. It's 11-6 miles an hour. I kind of decided to film this at random, and the highway's going on over there. It's Monday at 4 o'clock. But anyway, just kind of take a close look. Look for scratches. Look for some obvious signs. This one needs to be washed and waxed pretty bad. So far, we haven't seen anything. This right here is kind of a troubling sign if you're looking. If they haven't told you anything about being in a wreck, you can see these lines here and what looks like paint that dribbled down at one time. And what that is it's been repainted, and it's been poorly repainted at that. You also want to look for rust. Rust in the door hinges is pretty common. Usually that cleans up. That's not a big deal. Look at the edge guards for the door. That's usually a telltale sign of some wear and tear. It looks like at one time they had some sort of, I guess, strip or sticker apparatus here, and that's what that was. Not a big deal. You want to look for inspection stickers and see if the vehicle's been rebuilt. I know this one has, and we'll get to that here in a second. The hood looks pretty good. Don't see any fallacies with it. Looking at the fender, I can see one little spot that's kind of crinkled right here. May have been pushed in at one time and kind of got pulled back out. See a little rough spot here. I don't know, that might buff out. Don't see any real overspray issues. You can see some chipping starting to happen in this crease right here. Another telltale sign too. This part of the body is one piece all the way to the back. This fender is separate. But notice you got paint jammed in the middle. That's telling me that with these two pieces on there, post the vehicle's production, it has been painted. That's another telltale sign that the vehicle's been painted and possibly been in a wreck. Got more door apparatus stick-on type deal going on here, but not a big deal. That'll buff out. Check your door hinges and your doors. This vehicle don't have the doors on it, but the doors are in good condition. You saw that in one of our previous videos. If you haven't, you should go check it out. In about 99.7% of cases on Jeeps, the fender guards have been replaced around the wheels. And these are in kind of rough shape. You can see all the scratches on them. But you want to look close right here to the edge of the fender guard. Especially, we have this skid plate type deal going on here. So it's pushed it back. You can see how the paint is different underneath. Another telltale sign this vehicle's been painted. What I want to check is where your top is seated. Usually your top's seated to about here, whether you have a hard or a soft top on the vehicle. You want to check here. You can see a little bit of rust starting here. That's very typical, but nothing too big on this side. You come around here, everything looks typical Jeep for the age. No big deal. See what's going on here? All right. See what's going on here? You can see that we've got some red paint going on underneath this flake in here. What that is they took a red fender or a red, you know, whatever that is, and they painted it to match the vehicle at one point because this was all damaged. Now, I didn't know that when I bought this, and we had a talk about how it was all rebuilt and all that, so I'm not too mad about that. But understand that if your top's on the vehicle, it's going to come down to here. So when that top's on there, you're not going to see that. So you want to make sure that you try to check every corner before you buy something to see if they're being upfront with you, basically. So now that we've talked about the paint, we want to talk about the interior and the condition of the interior. Does it have the original seats? Does it have the original console? Usually signs of modification. Now, modification isn't always bad. The thing about modifying Jeeps, too, is, let's just go back to the front end of this. If I was going to sell this Jeep, there would be some people that say that front end's ridiculous and I'm not going to buy the entire thing. Some people would say the wheels are ridiculous, and I agree the wheels are kind of ridiculous, but they may not buy it based off of your taste in the Jeep, whether you put a lot of money into it or not. So be smart with your modifications, and especially with interiors too. You can see that I redid the interior in my YJ and tried to keep it to a minimalistic but kind of classic theme, and I think that worked out well. Back to the point of this, I want to check the seats. Make sure that, you know, the edges aren't torn. If it's a high mileage Jeep, that's kind of a sign that people have been getting in and out of it. Obviously the side where you get out, see if it's sagging. Make sure that all the, you know, the doohickeys for the folding the seat forward and all that work pretty well. So take a look underneath your carpet. A couple of thousand straw wrappers under here. Usually there's a crease in the carpet right around here on the side. We want to pull that back. But first, let's look right here. This is where, you know, your ankle of your foot there sits. And you can see the carpet's actually wore completely through right here. Very common, but what is also very common on Jeeps, we pull the carpet back and, you know, contract 7,000 types of dust in here.
2,000 years later.
Look underneath here. A lot of Jeeps, of course we have all kinds of modification wires, but a lot of Jeeps get the floor pan rusted out on them. So check the condition. You can see where that hole is starting to have some rust. It's up to you. A lot of people spray these. It's kind of up to you on what you want to do. The thing about spraying them is, though, if this is something you care about, when you spray the floor in a Jeep with like bed liner and you put your top and your doors on, it's like 3 times more noisy than it ever was before. So just kind of keep that in mind. You also have a hole that goes straight to the ground right there if you're trying to stay nice and insulated. So just kind of keep that in mind if that's something you want to do. You know, if you like freezing in the wintertime and, you know, noisy cabins. But this one doesn't look too bad, but you want to make sure that you check both sides of the vehicle as well as the rear and just make sure that the floor pans are in good shape of the Jeep. So now we want to go through the interior and just kind of check everything. Make sure that all the gauges work, the lights on the dash work. Now on the TJ, what you can do is actually, if you hold down the trip meter, turn the key on and continue to hold it, you'll get a bunch of 8s as you see there. Let the 8s go across and it's going to do a full gauge sweep and let you know that everything's working, give you software versions and all that good stuff. So it'll take a thing, but you can notice all the lights are kind of coming on and just making sure that they all work and work well and function properly. After it does all the lights on the dash, it's going to go through and do the gauges, and you'll see that here in a second. Go through, make sure all your gears engage, and obviously take it on a test drive. Make sure from the interior that everything feels good. See if your 4-wheel drive engages. The 4-wheel drive setup on the Jeeps are pretty terrible, on the TJs that is. The linkage is just, they get bonded, they're cheaply made, so make sure that it engages. That's probably not healthy. So check and make sure that that engages. If not, you're probably gonna have to replace the linkage. I'm gonna have to do it on this one. So now we're gonna start her up, listen to it run, listen for any ticks, bottom end, top end noise, like that. So far so good. Oil pressure looks good, slowly climbing. No weird noises, no nothing like that at the time. That you want to check for on your Jeep. TJs and YJs. Jeep's running. See if the key comes out. If it does, you got to do a lock cylinder. So now that this is turning into an example of a Jeep that you should not buy, let's climb underneath and kind of look at a few things. The condition it's in. On this particular Jeep, it's painted. So there's no rust at all, really. I don't see any bubbles in the paint, anything like that. That would be indicative of rust, so that's a good thing. Now we want to look at the bell housing of the transmission and the oil pan. I want to look for leaks. The oil pan looks relatively dry. That's promising. The transmission is, well, that's a different story. Check your exhaust system for fallacies. Look at the welds, only if it's a customized exhaust system, and see how they are. This exhaust system was welded by a 2-year-old, so, you know, that's fine. Take a look at your oil filter, see if there's any oil dribbling out. There he is. That's not good. So you're gonna have one in the front and a 2-piece one in the back. Give them a little shake. See if there's any play in them. That play right there is normal, so that's not a big deal. But if there was some obvious play or clunkiness, you might want to check into your U-joints or see what's going on there. Check your differentials, see if they're nice and dry. There's one obviously in the front for your full drive and one in the back. Let's see how much play, if there's any play in there. Everything looks good. It's not a bad idea either to jack the vehicle up. Grab the wheel at the 3 and the 6 position So here and across there, try to twist it that way. Twist it from top to bottom at the 12 and 6 position and see if there's any play there. That would be signs of a bad wheel bearing. Check your suspension parts, your tie rod ends, your steering stabilizer, and your sway bar links. Make sure there's no obvious play in that to begin with. Idea either to grab the vehicle up top here or rock it back and forth and listen for any play in any suspension parts. Kind of be a clunky sound. Yeah, that noise right there. So take it on a test drive, look for play in the steering. You know, if the steering wheel is pointed that way or that way while you're going straight, that might be an issue. Brakes the best you can for signs of wear on the rotor. See if the caliper's locked up, anything like that. Give it a drive, see if you hear any weird noises. One of the wheels sticking or, you know, standard squeakage. Also, you might look for brake dust on the wheel. You can see there's plenty there. That might be a sign that you got some brakes that are getting a little warm. This might be not a big deal for if you're buying a junker to fix up, but turn your lights on, turn your hazards on, see if they're flashing. And they actually just stopped. But go around, check, and see what's going on. Well, that's good. This we can do that. That's fine. Let's take a look at the hood, make sure everything opens up well. On the TJ, you're gonna have a T-shaped handle. You just pull it up, pull it back. On these, you just do like that right there. And another one on the other side. Make sure these are in good condition and not slammed against the fender like I just did. And then you'll have your release right there, and that's the same on the TJ also, or the YJ also. Look at the engine once you open the hood for a couple of obvious things on Jeeps. Obviously, this one has been fitted with a aftermarket air intake. That's nice and zip tied on so it doesn't fall and, you know, kink some lines or something like that. If it's a older model TJ or a newer model YJ, you're gonna have the 4.0. Actually, this is all models of TJs will have the 4.0 unless you go with the 4-cylinder. Some will have a distributor in the back, or actually it'll be on the side right here, right where that crankshaft position sensor is. That's where your distributor was set. Make sure all your spark plug wires look good. If it's a newer model, you're going to have the crankshaft position sensor in a coil. Make sure that coil's good, fire on all 6, and is seated properly in there. Check your belts on your 4.0. If you have a 4.2, older model YJ, you're going to have V-belts. So make sure those are in good condition. Make sure the AC compressor works if you have AC. Some of the older YJs have AC also. Check for vacuum leaks. That's probably going to be an obvious vacuum leak right there. YJs with the carbureted version, the carburetor was set here. You want to make sure all your vacuum lines look good. Your fuel pump looks good, which was set right there where those bolts are. Oil cap on the 4.0s, it's in the center of the valve cover. On the 4.2s, it's up front here. I'm going to take this off here, look for obvious signs of blow by or a milky color. Everything looks good there, nice and clean. Check your dipstick tube also and make sure that there's no miscolored oil and that it's at the proper level. Your coolant and the pressure release cap. The 4.2 and the 4.0 have the same radiator. Everything sounds good there. Your throttle body intake and make sure that all the hoses and everything look connected. Your throttle cable's in the proper position. You'll have a carburetor sitting here if you have a 4.2 older model. Check your engine mounts, make sure they look good. If you start the engine up and rev it up and the motor is rocking back and forth, that's probably an obvious sign that we have an issue. Check your battery and battery post. If you have a modified Jeep of any sort, you're going to have about 10,000 extra wires attached. Just make sure the posts look okay and nothing's touching or wore out. These are pretty wore out, so I'll probably replace those soon. Listen for any obvious ticking noises or knocking noises. It's coming from right there. No weird, obvious knocking or ticking noises. Everything sounds okay. Rev the engine up, see how it sounds. Sounds good. Weird noises. I think sounds pretty normal there. We do have a check engine light. I'll explain that here in a minute. Look for any obvious leaks that may be coming out of the valve cover on the side of the other. Usually you can tell by the discoloration of the block below or wet spots that look like they are pretty fresh. Also look for coolant leaks on your hoses. Make sure no hoses are collapsed. Things like that. Everything looks good on this model. Now, the issue that Jeeps have, YJs, I've never really experienced this problem. TJs, it's a big deal. On the 97 through 2004 models, the fuel tank had an issue where, that's a new cap, and this is odd, but basically where you would fill it up, and then it would try to burp the gas back out. In 2004, they fixed that issue. The second common issue is the fuel sending unit on top of the tank, which is, can't see it, but it sits right about here. The seal comes off over time. What happens then is when you're filling the Jeep up with gas, it tends to start overflowing onto the ground. This Jeep has the issue. That's something the owner did not tell me about. I found out the hard way. And so that's actually a lengthy process. You'll have to pull the fuel tank out, reseal that fuel sending unit, and it's just kind of a pain in the butt. So may check into that, see if they have any issues with those two issues. If not, it's not a big deal. That's what's thrown the engine code. It's actually evaporation emissions, small and large leak detected, which could be kind of dangerous when you have fuel leaking out of the back of the Jeep while you're going down the road. That could start a fire, any obvious thing like that. So want to look out for that too. So there's a few things to look at. There's probably a few obvious ones that I'm missing. If you'll put those down in the comments. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit that little bell so you know when there's a new video coming out. I appreciate you tuning in. Leave a comment down below if you want to see something else, or you're interested in what else we can do with this TJ. Also, if there's something that I missed, overlooked, be sure to comment that too. We appreciate you watching, and until next time.